Hello everyone. After dealing with various issues of laning, I wanted to ask a very simple question. Do you have to listen to each and every word of laning? So the first school of thought says there's a big difference between all the lanings of the year and 1 to 2 parshas. Parshat Zachor, which may be biblical, and Parshat Para, which may be biblical as well. So even though the Mishnah says in Maseches Megillah, V'atan koreh b'Torah u'metargem, that a person under bar mitzvah can read the Torah, comes along the Taz and brings a machlokas. According to the Maharshal, the Yira'eh mizeh she'ein hakatan oleh l'maftir b'Parshat Zachor. Why? Because ba'inan bar chiyuv ala alot, v'af b'Parshat Para yesh lizaher dehimi de'oraita. A minor can get any aliyah, but he cannot get the aliyah for Parshat Zachor and Parshat Para because those are biblical, and only someone that's obligated biblically can fulfill the obligation for others, versus the rest of the Kriyas HaTorah, which are rabbinic, and there we're willing to be lenient with someone under bar mitzvah who also rabbinically might be obligated in the mitzvah. However, the Taz brings an opposing view. Kol makom, he says, Anu noagim likroto v'haoleh afilu leminyan zayin. However, our minhag is that we bring him up for that aliyah too, because the Mishnah does not differentiate. What could be the distinction? The Oraisa, the Rabbanan, I understand. But in terms of hearing the Torah, there's no big difference in shul between Parshat Zachor and, say, Parshat Tetzaveh, you read right before it. So explains the Binyan Shlomo, Rav Shlomo Levilna, his years 1828 to 1905. He was an amazing genius. He had a photographic memory, who edited the Vilna Shas by heart, not by manuscript. He comes along and says that Parshat Zachor is different from all the rest of the Parshas of the year, because all the rest of the Parshas of the year, lo nitkan rakim ikat tzibur mechuyavim likro b'Torah v'lishmoa, aval ino munach chiyuv hakol echad ve'echad likro gam ken imeno tzibur li'itpalel. According to Rav Shlomo Levilna, all the rest of the Parshas of the year are only an obligation on you if you're in a minyan. But if you're not, there's no obligation, as we discussed, to make it up. Aval Parshat Zachor choval kol yachid v'yachid. But Parshat Zachor is a personal obligation that you have to do in a minyan, but it's a personal obligation. In other words, if it's a rabbinic Torah reading, it's an obligation upon the community. But if it's a biblical one, like Parshat Zachor and maybe Parshat Para, it's a personal obligation, and therefore you have to have someone go up there who's as obligated as you, namely biblically. And that's what Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank quotes verbatim in his Mikroi Kodesh, that Parshat Zachor is different from the rest of the lanings of the year, because, and I quote, HaKoreh motzi et harabim yedei chova, ubevadai sharich lishmoa mila b'mila, shemitzvat kriyat haTorah chayuv u'miikaro latzibur, ma she'en ken bezachor, ha-mitzvah hi al kol yachid v'yachid. Unlike the rest of the Torah readings of the year, which is a communal obligation, you don't have to hear every single word. When it comes to Parshat Zachor, you do. So, notwithstanding that Parshat Zachor and maybe Parshat Para are biblical and the rest of the lanings are rabbinic, when it comes to the regular lanings, the 99.9% of the lanings of the year that are rabbinic, indeed, the poskim come down on this issue based on the 3 points of view that we've already introduced. Number one, it's a personal obligation, though it has to be done in a minyan. Number two, it's your personal obligation to make sure laning is happening, though you're not personally obligated in it. And number three, it's a communal obligation, totally and utterly. And we're about to see those 3 points of view vis-a-vis our question, do you have to hear every single word of laning? Rav Moshe Feinstein was totally machmir. He said, "Vaday shetzarich kol adam lishmoa kol hakriya shelo yechsa lo af teva achat." A person has to listen to every laning and every word of the laning. And then he goes into a lumdus about if you heard 3 psukim at least, which is the most minimum for an aliyah, but you didn't hear the rest, are you yotze yedei chova on a Monday, a Thursday, a Yom Tov, etc. But his assumption is you have to hear each and every word. Rav Pomeranchik died at 34, but wrote so much beforehand, and his Emek Bracha basically says that if you, an individual, leave in the middle of laning, If you heard all together 21 psukim, which is the minimum laning, 3 psukim per aliyah, times 7 is 21 on a Shabbos. You have to indeed make it up with a chumash. But if you're in the room, he's more mekel. Even if you're thinking of something else, that's okay, as long as you're in the room. But these two, poskim, Rav Paranchik and Rav Moshe Feinstein, assume it's a personal obligation to hear each and every word of the laning. A more mekel position is the itim labina. It's a perush on the Sefer Ha'itim, which is one of the Rishonim, but written by Rav Yaakov Shur. His years 1853 to 1924, the Rav of the year called Kitov. He quotes the famous story that we have already quoted, Rav Sheshet, that turned his back to the Torah and said, you guys can listen to Torah reading, I'm going to learn Torah, and all the various interpretations of how he's allowed to do that, since the Gemara in Sota Daf Lamed Tet says you're not allowed to do that. And one of the interpretations is of the Bahag, that says if 10 other people are listening, then the 11th and onwards can actually do other things. So based on that, he says, just like the middle point of view that we've mentioned, that it's not a personal obligation, it's a personal obligation for you to make sure the community lanes. And therefore, if there's 10 people that are listening, you have taken care of the community laning, and you can do other things. The third point of view is it's totally and utterly a chovat hatzibur. Just like Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank said, in the name of the Binyan Shlomo, indeed, it has nothing to do with you personally, and therefore you can miss a few words. And that's what Rav Chaim Palaji says in his book called Tzmicha L'Chaim. There was never an enactment that you hear every word. You have to read it communally. Once it's a community laning, it's fine. You don't have to listen to each and every word. And therefore, according to him, it's a total communal laning. You don't have to listen to each and every word. You can interrupt it, but you don't have to listen to each and every word. And that's what Rav Ovadia Yosef paskins the halacha, that he's very, very surprised by the words of Rav Moshe Feinstein, because the Ramban paskins it's a chovat hatzibur, communal obligation, and therefore he says that if you're in the middle of Psukei de Zimra, where you're allowed to stop for various things, there's no reason to stop for laning, because laning, it's a communal obligation, not a personal one. Continue their Psukei de Zimra, and obviously Kriyat Shema and its brachot before and after. Lehalacha Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach says that if you lost your attention in the middle of Kriyas HaTorah, or even you spoke in the middle of Kriyas HaTorah, not the right thing to do, but you did, as long as you didn't divert your attention from Kriyas HaTorah being done, V'hainu, he said, namely, if the Baal Korah said, instead of lo tignov, he said tignov, namely, thou shalt not steal became steal, you don't have to hear laning again. And even though in other things that you have to yotze yedei chova, you have to hear each and every word, here you can somech on the shitot, she'ein zechu yuchuyuv hakol yachid, ela chovat hatzibur, it's a communal obligation. So as we can see, the question of communal obligation versus personal one will have ramifications on, do you have to listen to each and every word of laning? Is Parshat Zachor different than the rest of the lanings or not? And if it's not, we have 3 points of view if you need to listen to each and every word.